I think our society likes to think about it as a time of winter, right? Like, okay, you have the spring of your life and the summer of your life, and then you start to get older, and then you retire, and then it's just like winter, and it's drab and it's horrible. And like I said, it's sort of like this downhill slide to the end. But I don't want to think of it, and I would like to use the language here, think about it as a time of harvest. Right? Because you've done all this work. We've all had all these life experiences. We've done all this work. We've made all these contributions.
Sure.
We've learned so many lessons, right? So that we're moving through the world in a much more productive, positive way. And then you get to this point where, okay, now I'm starting my midlife, my third act, shall we say, of my life. This is when I get to harvest all of that knowledge and experience and hopefully wisdom, and then perhaps even make my biggest contributions. Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton. I am the host of the Marching Roundtable podcast and the owner of Marching Arts Education. My name is Tim, but you can call me Beast. With me tonight, my wonderful co-host, Dr. Mary White. Mary, how are you?
Doing great. You can just call me Mary.
Okay, not Dr. White tonight then, but Mary,
No.
I'm so glad that you're here. You and I have been friends a very, very long time, and we're excited to talk about loving midlife. I've ran across this book, Learning to Love Midlife, which we're using sort of as a framework for this conversation, and I've been thinking a lot about the fact that I am now entering my midlife period, and what do I want that to be like? And how can I think about it in the most productive and positive way? And Mary, you and I have had those conversations off and on for a long time.
We sure have. Because we've known each other when we were younger, maybe kindergarten, just kidding. But we were young. And so over years, we have said, what are we going to do when we're this age? What are we going to do when we're that age? Or how are we going to approach this? And definitely thinking about mindset too. I always feel like you and I have good mindset conversations. What's our mindset?
Right. So our point here, everybody, is to have these conversations in sort of a very vulnerable, real way, talk about things, how we really feel about it and how we want to move forward. And that's our intent for setting these up. We plan to have a series of 6 conversations. Tonight is sort of setting it up about getting rid of all those stereotypes that our society throws at us. And then we're going to have 5 more conversations I will talk about a little bit later. I want to first introduce myself in case you're watching this and you don't know me. My name is Tim Hinton. I live in Tampa, Florida, and I have been in the world of music education in general, and music education my entire career. I was a band director for 10 years. And then for the last 30 plus years, I've been self-employed as a music arranger, composer, drill designer, show designer for marching bands, concert bands at all different levels. And I've had the great privilege of working with a lot of students and a lot of great educators. About 12 years ago, Mary and I, with 2 other colleagues, started the podcast called The Marching Roundtable, when our idea was to get conversations going about things that people didn't seem to be talking about in the world of the marching arts. And then we also, that led into Marching Arts Education, which is now where the Marching Roundtable resides, which is also videos, webinars, and conversations like this one. So Mary, you and I have known each other, gosh, probably over 30 years, right? And
For sure.
you were part of that beginning of the Marching Roundtable. So why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Mary White, and I am a 36-year veteran of the school district in which I reside, which is in Stuart, Florida. It's on the east coast of Florida, almost directly across from Tampa, 3 hours, 45 minutes across. And I was a teacher. I taught language arts and reading. I was an assistant principal at an elementary and a school and a high school. Then I was a principal of an elementary school for a long time. Then I became the director of curriculum and instruction at the district. I retired after 36 years in a school district, and I have another career with a company that is fantastic, and they work with children diagnosed with autism. I don't work with the children, but there's a lot of school contracts that I work with. So that's what I do. So I certainly have still stayed inside that educational realm, always thinking about what's best for kids.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, I've been an educator my entire life as well. Now, listen, everybody, we are not PhDs in psychology or any of that stuff. Mary, do you want to explain that part?
Sure. So I'm I have a PhD in leadership, not in psychology, or I don't have a medical doctor. Um, I don't always, I'm not coming from a medical perspective, nor am I coming from a lens of psychology. So I'm just coming from a lens of many, many years in the education system, but many, many, many years living and breathing on this earth as well.
Right. And so we're just here to share our thoughts. This is something that's interesting and compelling to us. And those of us that are here live, thank you for being here. We'll have you join the conversation a little bit later. And if you're watching this later, we hope that these concepts are helpful to you. So I've been thinking a lot about what do I want my midlife time to be like? And actually, what does that mean? Because unfortunately, in our culture, midlife is the only thing we really know about is sort of like this joke. Okay, well, men have this midlife crisis. They get a toupee, they drive a convertible, they act like idiots and divorce their wife and run off with the secretary, whatever. And it's all very negative stuff about sort of like a failing at that age.
And I think you're right, Tim. I was thinking of over the hill napkins at a birthday party. I mean, it's very stereotypical, but I think that often does happen. How do you get past that? I mean, how do
Right.
you move beyond that?
Right. And that's the point here for this conversation is, okay, well, that's not really what it is. And let's sort of define the terms here to start with. Okay. And again, we're using the book Learning to Love Midlife by Chip Conley, which I found helpful in just setting up parameters for this conversation. And he talks about the fact that really midlife is a very long time now. It used to be that everybody sort of thought like, okay, I grow up and then go to college and that's the first phase of my life. And then I have my career and start my family. And that's the second phase. And then I retire and there's a big downhill slide and then I die, and it's like this third part, this third act, as I'm going to call it during this conversation, was sort of like, well, then you get old. But actually, this is not true. And it's less and less true every single year. This midlife time actually is sort of like this third act. And it can be a time, according to his research and from sources that he cited, midlife can be anywhere from 35 all the way up to 75. So it's this huge chunk of time because everybody sort of starts that third phase of their life at different times, right? But most people, I think, find it in their 50s, 60s, but on into their 70s. And then at a certain point, you might get into sort of older age time. But midlife time, Mary, it's a long time. It's a big, long chunk. Could be 30 to 40 years. This is a long time. The way I want to think about it, I think our society likes to think about it as a time of winter, right? Like, okay, you have the spring of your life and the summer of your life, and then you start to get older, and then you retire, and then it's just like winter, and it's drab, and it's horrible. And like I said, it's sort of like this downhill slide to the end. But I don't want to think of it, and I would like to use the language here, think about it as a time of harvest, right? Because you've done all this work. We've all had all these life experiences. We've done all this work. We've made all these contributions.
Sure.
We've learned so many lessons, right? So that we're moving through the world in a much more productive, positive way. And then you get to this point where, okay, now I'm starting my midlife, my third act, shall we say, of my life. This is when I get to harvest all of that knowledge and experience and hopefully wisdom, and then perhaps even make my biggest contribution. So what do you think about the time of harvest idea, Mary?
I just love that idea because I feel like I'm thinking of reap what you sow, like that kind of adage. I think it's a biblical adage, like you've sowed all these seeds for such a great harvest, if you will. And it could be great because you have all these experiences. You don't care what, sometimes you have no filter. I mean, but a lot of times you do, like you care what people think, but not so much. You're able to stand on your own 2 feet and be confident. I like that. The word harvest says to me also plenty. It's a plentiful time. You may not have looked at it that way.
Yeah, I love this idea of harvesting. All the work I've done now really starts to pay off for me, right? This is the way I like to think about it. And as we think about all the different aspects of our life, like tonight we're talking about stereotypes, but the other things we're going to talk about in ensuing weeks are our physical, how we interact with our body and think about it, the emotional, the mental, our vocational, and our spiritual life. I feel like by the time we get to this point in our third act into our midlife time, I feel like I'm running on a more even keel, right? I'm not reacting
Sure.
so much to things because I've been there. I know how that went. And I'm like, okay, got the t-shirt, I know this is going to pass. I don't react as emotionally, for example, Mary.
And we have all those resources that we've gathered up and all those scenarios that we've gathered up throughout our life. We're like, yep, we're not going to act like that again, or we're able to stand above it somehow. I mean, there's a lot of, in your younger days of a little bit of an angst, but now I feel like that is dissolved somewhat because you're really you're relying on your stores of knowledge, of spiritual, of physical, of all those things.
Right. And it's well documented, everybody. And this is not this, everybody will agree with, well, most people would agree with this, I think. Well, I'm just going to say it anyway. I think that a lot of people, many people in our society, make their biggest contribution during this midlife time because you have accrued all of this knowledge and experience and wisdom, and you've been through all this stuff, and now you can make your really most significant contribution to the
Wow.
world. And if you look at a lot of historical figures, important people in the United States over time, and look back at the history, you will find that most of the huge contributions, the great novel, the scientific discovery, the psychological theory that changes the world. These happen not when someone's 20, but when someone spent their whole life studying and working and then gets to the point where they can really make their
Sure.
contribution. So, Mary, I love this idea of, okay, I may have already had a whole entire career. And even if I'm leaving that career and starting into this new third act of my life, I still want to make a significant contribution in some way. And I get to accrue all this knowledge and experience and make that contribution in whatever way. It might be something completely new and unthought of, but I love the idea of this being the time when I can really make a difference.
Sometimes finding that can, like let's say Albert Einstein, like his, theorems were he was older when he developed these theorems. His a lifetime of practice and study and scientific research led to those things. But how we determine what our E equals MC squared is somewhat a different path than for people. I mean, I don't know if I've made my greatest contribution yet. I don't think so, but I want to think I haven't, and I'm on my way to do that.
Well, and I didn't mean to put the pressure on that now's the time you have to do your thing. But my point is, you may have already made great contributions to the world. I'm sure that all of us have. But my point is not to think of this next time as, well, I'm done and I'm just going to sit around and watch TV and not
Right.
do anything. But like, I get to live this next part however I want to with all of this harvesting, all this knowledge and experience. And what do I want that to be? And how do I want that to work? And then
Mm.
I feel like most people want to continue to contribute in some way. Maybe I'm going to have a blog. Maybe I'm simply going to tutor and mentor a lot of friends and people in the business I've been in. Maybe I'm just going to be a great grandmom and help to
Yeah.
raise the next generation. Like any of those things are a huge contribution that we make in our midlife time.
My brother is my oldest brother is going to be 70 this July, and he wanted to go to law school again. Like he's very, very bright. I don't have to tell you that, but so that he could be a lawyer to do pro bono work.
Right. Yeah. Great example. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's millions of examples, but the cool thing is we each get to do this on our own. And I have enjoyed now thinking about this for myself, right? Like, what do I want my life to be like? How do I want to
Right.
harvest all this stuff? Part of it is just living a nice, easy, productive, successful life, knowing how to manage my finances, knowing how to keep myself fit so that I can move through the world the way I want to, not being on a more even keel emotionally, all
Right.
these things. I just want to put that a life well lived is a contribution to the world. There is a quote I
Sure.
want to read from Chip Conley from his book. Talks about life is not a one tank journey in which you fuel up with education, relationships, and a career early in life, expecting that what you've learned and experienced will provide enough energy and inspiration to last a lifetime. He says life is at least a two tank journey. To avoid getting stuck on the side of the road, we simply need to make a pit stop to refill the tank. So one of the things he talks about is a lot of people sort of take a moment to collect themselves, take a break, figure out where am I going next, whatever. I think that's completely valid to do that. Especially if you have the ability to say, you know what, if I'm gonna retire, I'm gonna take a year or two and figure out what am I doing next and let that all germinate. It's not like you have to immediately go, but that time of filling up the tank again and getting ready for whatever might be next is time well spent.
I think that's especially true, Tim, if you had a very long career or a very, I don't know where the career defined you.
Sure. A lot of people are
And
like that.
now,
Yeah.
and now you're like, okay, now I can define me better than my career. My career does not define me.
Yeah. I love that idea. So I like the idea of refueling, starting again. That's just another concept that I liked. And also, he had a study in the book where he mentioned that someone had done a study and realized that if you reframe the way you think about your midlife time, right, rather than thinking of it as this big downhill slide, this time of winter, this embarrassing, my life's over and it's just all downhill from here. If you reframe that as we're discussing, as all right,
Mhm.
now I'm going to rethink it, I'm going to reframe it, I'm going to think about this third act in a completely different way. This study has shown that it granted 7.5 years of additional life to people who did this when they
Wow.
reframed their mindset on aging. Again, everybody, if you reframe your mindset on aging in the way we're discussing, studies have shown you can get 7.5 years of additional life. That's how impactful. We all know the way we think is hugely important, but the way we think about what is this time in my life right now, hugely important. He says this is more added longevity than stopping smoking or even starting to exercise over the age of 50. So all the things that you can do as you're moving into your midlife time or moving through your midlife time, reframing the way you're thinking about that time can give you extra years of life.
That's so interesting. I didn't know the whole 7.5 years, Tim, but really, really interesting. But sometimes when your knees hurt, sometimes it's hard to reframe some of that stuff. I'm just
Well,
being
yes.
honest.
Well, of course, but we're going to talk about that next week. We're going to talk about the
Okay, sorry.
physical. No, but that's good that you mentioned that because you're right. There are part of the reframing is also rethinking about who you are, what's important, how are you presenting yourself in the world, how is the world reacting to you, like coming to terms with all of that. Like my body cannot do today what it could do when I was 30, right? And that's very frustrating to me every time I get in the gym and I want to push a bunch of weights around and keep my physical fitness going. But I've learned to say, like, okay, well, my goals for being in the gym and for my
Have to
exercise
change.
are
Right.
different. So that's an example of what we're going to talk about next week with the physical life. And the same with your emotional life, your mental life, all of the spiritual life, all these things you need to sort of think about. The idea is take a moment. Here we are. Let's have these conversations. Let's think
Mhm.
about how am I going to think about that for me? How am I going to reframe that so that I can move into this next act, taking
Right.
all the stuff I've learned.
Are you, I think I'm just interpreting what you're saying, like in my mind, so I'm clear. You're saying, like, yes, my knees may not have been able to do what I'm doing at 30, but where am I now? What's the new goal? And, to keep that moving forward, to keep that, progressing, to change that thinking about, yes, I can do what I did, but what can I do?
That and perhaps maybe now I have the wisdom to realize that there are some things I need to do differently to
Right.
make my knees feel better, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe I need to change the way I eat. Maybe I need to get more exercise. Maybe I need to be in the pool. Like
Right.
maybe I need to go see a doctor about my knees, like I feel
Maybe
like
all of the above, Tim.
exactly. But the point is, you now have the experience and knowledge to say, oh, I think I know how to progress and how to check on this, and it's just a different feeling that I have right now about myself from thinking about it this way. There's one other thing
That's
I want
great.
to talk about too. That is, he talks a lot in the book about the midlife chrysalis, right? About how this compares to, of course, the caterpillar going into the cocoon and coming out as a butterfly. I feel like we have the opportunity to do that here at this moment of like, how am I going to take, because, the caterpillar goes into the cocoon with all the stuff it's learned and eaten and nutrients and everything. And then it goes through this process and turns out it somehow miraculously into a butterfly. I want to be a butterfly in the next act of my life.
Just imagining that, Tim, makes me understand that mindset a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it really, the visual. visual and physicality of that makes me think about that mindset to be a butterfly, to be a beautiful butterfly that's
Right.
able to fly.
And the other side of this same concept that he talks about that I really liked is that process of turning into a butterfly is pretty messy. You know what I mean? Like I think like there's kind of turning into goo before one turns
And
into a
that's what I was
butterfly
going to
kind of.
ask. Is there ick?
Yeah. So I think that, and one of the things he talks about is the midlife unravel. In other words, sometimes when you get to this point, things have to sort of fall apart a little bit before, or you have to come to terms with things that are maybe falling apart, maybe like your knee,
Darn it.
right? To realize how am I going to move forward and fly. So he talks
Mm-hmm.
about sometimes things didn't go as we expected or planned. Like, a lot of times you get to this point and you thought, well, I thought I would have, 2.6 kids and $1 million estate and all this money in the bank. And and then you realize, oh, well, here I am. And that all that stuff I thought was going to be here isn't happening. So you have to sort of come face to face with that and with your mortality, right? Like you're also like, okay, I realize somebody once said this to me, I thought was brilliant. Like one day you open up your eyes and you realize, oh, I'm actually closer to the end of my days than I am to the beginning. And this very wise man said, when you realize that point, now is the time to sort of get over it and realize that time is not what's most important, but the quality of that time you're going to spend moving forward.
That's wonderful because I think it's something that people are when they reach this age, because we may feel 30, it's something that's to be feared in some regard,
Right. And
or
this is the whole
fearful.
point. Right. The whole point is, and also don't fear the unraveling. Because I have to tell you, Mary, like I am at the point in my career, everybody, I'll tell you, I am 64. Okay. In case you want to know where I am on this spectrum. And I am ending or starting to wind up my career that I've been doing for 30 plus years as an arranger, composer, podcaster, music educator, all this stuff I've been doing. A lot of it I'm going to keep doing in some fashion, but I'm sort of reining it in. I'm backing off on it a little bit because there are other things I want to do. And so
Right.
part of this is allowing yourself to realize, okay, it didn't all go as I expected, but that's okay. I still take stock of the things you have learned, the experiences you have gotten out of it, and allow it to be a little bit messy, perhaps, as you start to figure out, well, what am I? Where am I heading? It doesn't have to be super tidy, right? He calls it the midlife unravel. Sometimes you have to sort of spend a little time stumbling around a little bit before you realize what this new path might be.
And there's no timeline to that unraveling, right? I mean, you're not setting
No.
you don't
And
say
some
this is,
people do it when they're 37. And some
yeah,
people do it when they're 78. Like it doesn't matter. The point is to get there and then realize I want to harvest. Now what am I going to do? So that's
it's
the
a lot to
idea.
chew. It's
The
a
other
lot to think about, Tim, like, and a lot
I
to,
know.
like, some people might find writing some of this down, like, important, like to reassess, what they're going to do inside their cocoon, what's the unraveling. Some people,
Right.
I think some of mine, I'm just being honest, was unraveling my career, who really defined me.
Right. And you
You
left
know,
that career at a certain point and you're like, well, is that who I am? Who am I now? Right. Like, and
right?
who am I going to be now? And that is very common. People are often defined by what they did. And now all of a sudden, well, that doesn't mean you aren't still that, but like, what do you want to be now? And maybe you have
Yeah.
to take a little mess. It's a little messy figuring that out. The other thing that I want to make sure to mention is he suggests that you give yourself permission to start over and start something new. And a lot of people do this. A lot of very successful businesses have been started when someone retired or they got to this midlife time. A lot of people have decided to go into art and suddenly they're a renowned
Hmm.
artist. Sometimes they've decided to write that novel. They're starting to, like, it's wonderful to give yourself permission to try something new. And when you try something new, Mary, you're not good at it. It's going to be messy, and that's okay. But we're not good when we're adults and we've been successful. We're not good at like admitting
Right.
I'm going to letting myself be bad at something. But I got to tell you, it is very, very good for you to let yourself be really bad at something. So now's the time. If you're into your midlife and you want to try some new things, go be bad at it for a while. It's good for you.
Sorry. That's Socks the cat, who is approaching his midlife, walking over my computer all the time.
I love that.
I do love that. I think that exploration is very difficult. Those explorations, like I used to do crafts and art all the time when I was younger. Then I didn't do any. But now I ask myself, do I want to do them? I don't know. Like you have to keep on, it's like a trial and error. Like, do I want to do that? I know I want to read more, so I'm doing that. I know.
Yeah, but maybe if you used to, as a kid, used to love to draw, maybe you buy that set of colored pencils and a book and you start to draw something. Just see, like, figure out how do I want to spend my time? And it doesn't have to be an earth shattering contribution, but it has to be a life well lived where I figure out where am I finding my joy. So the concept I want to give everybody here as we're wrapping up this first part of the discussion is you can be happier as you get older. All right, listen to this. Your midlife time can be your happiest time. It's not a big downhill slide, everybody. We're saying this is not true, or at least it's not going to be true for us. You can get happier as you get older. In fact, one of the things I love that he says is don't think of it as getting older, just think of it as continuing to grow. Because that's what's happening. You're continuing to grow. Now, that's exciting, right? I can get excited about where am I growing next, right? How am I
Yeah.
going to grow next as opposed to, oh, my corns are hurting and when the weather comes through, like talking about my medicine and my ailments and all. I run into these people all the time. I would rather talk about where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What is still exciting to me?
Yeah.
So I feel
What's
like I've
next?
been there. I feel like I've done that. I have less emotional up and downs, and I have a belief that I can get through anything. So I'm going to take all of that, and I'm going to figure out how can I make myself happier now.
I love it, Tim. I love everything about it. Really speaks to that growth mindset too, which we've talked about many, many times. You
Right.
know,
And the point that you made a minute ago is we need to talk about it. So if you're listening to this, you don't have to come on here and have a part of these conversations. Although some of you that are watching, and I hope that you will share some of your thoughts now. We're getting to that point. Excuse me. In fact, if you would put in the chat, if you would like to contribute something and say something, please type that in. But what I want everybody to know is it's okay to give yourself permission to start over and you need to have the conversations. And if it's with us, great. If it's call up a friend, hey, we're both about the same age. How are you feeling about this? Go have dinner with somebody, join a support group, do whatever, however this works for you, but allow yourself to have the conversation. So is anybody here listening that would like to contribute something?
I don't know. Kelly is here. If she would like to say something,
Kelly, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, feel free to turn your mic on.
thank you, Kelly. She said,
Kelly, thank you for being here to watch. What do you have any reactions to all the stuff we just said?
It is so positive. Like it's so, I mean, Tim, you know that I've had a lot of struggles the last 5 years that were out of my control. It was not things that I could have necessarily done something about. And it's easy to get sucked into that and be like, well, I'm just going to sit here in my hidey hole and, watch TV and exactly as you said, just kind of watch TV and hang out. But, to think this could be the time that, and I don't know what it is that I want to do like that. I think I have to get messy first.
Right. And remember that one of the points is you don't have to know. It's not like you're supposed to have it all figured out. But the thing is now oh, I have some tools to start to figure this out. Right. And that's not something I necessarily could have said when I was 22. Right. I mean, maybe I thought I knew it all then, but I didn't. And also, Kelly, like the great thing for you is you have had some struggles, some illnesses that you're moving past. And sometimes you do need to just hole up at home and heal. So I
Right.
don't want you to feel like it's saying that you can't do that. But the
Right.
point is
No.
also, I don't want you to feel like that defines you or that limits you because there's so much you can even do even in the situation that you found yourself in.
Exactly. And I think the key is to find the things it's just like you said about the gym when you were 30 versus now. There are definitely things that I cannot do anymore physically. And it's not going to come back. Like that's, I've got this leg injury. My leg is not, that nerve injury is not going away. My leg is going to be semi-paralyzed till the end of my days. But that doesn't prevent me from doing something that I maybe didn't even think about when I was younger and before that happened. So,
Right. And I think now you have the tools. I know you, Kelly, because Kelly, thank you for being here. I do know you. And I know that you have the tools to say, okay, well, so I may have this slight limitation, but I have the tools to deal with it in a really constructive, positive way and to figure out, okay, I'm not going to let that limit. There's all these things available in our world now to help me move past that and figure out how to deal with that and move on. But then what about the rest of you? Like, that's just one little tiny piece of who you are. What
right.
about the rest of you, your mental life, your spiritual life, your emotional life? How are you going to be expressing that? And do you feel like there's ways that you want to contribute?
Yes.
And if so, how cool that now's the time to maybe start to think about it.
Right. Right. So, and you and I've somewhat talked about this before. It's very motivating, but I think I almost think there's an accountability piece that I'm personally lacking. That I need somebody to say, "Hey, you said you wanted to try X. How's that going for you?"
Yeah, we haven't really talked about accountability in terms of this kind of messiness. What do you think about that, Tim?
No, I think that's brilliant. And I think we all need, one of the things I think that I feel equipped to do at this point is I very am proud of the fact that I have some very strong relationships, some very strong friendships. And I now feel like I have people that I can go to and say, give it to me straight. Tell me, like, I need some advice and I want you to tell me really what you think. And I feel proud that I have had the ability to create relationships where I can trust someone to be honest with me and maybe give me a little tough love, or just be a trusted ear that I can talk to and lean on and say, man, I'm struggling with this. And then they can say, oh, remember we talked about this and you said this or this or this, or have you tried this? Or this worked for me. Like, so Kelly, you have
Right.
people in your life who you can go to at those times and say, I feel like I need some accountability. Can you help me with that? Or will you have conversations with me?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. As
I'm
a matter of fact, my daughter is really good about holding me accountable when I set fitness kind of goals.
Wow.
I mean, she'll actually text me and say, "Hey," because we share Peloton, and she'll say, "You haven't been on your treadmill this week, Mom."
Right. And, a lot of people, that's what they do, Kelly, is they have an accountability buddy. And it's somebody that, like, once a week or even every day, they check in and go, hey, I ate better today. I had that healthy lunch. Just give yourself a gold star on the refrigerator. There's all kinds of techniques. But my point is, I have accrued a lifetime of experiences to know, oh, I have tools in my toolkit. And Kelly, I
Right.
know you have a lot of tools in your toolkit. One of them is having accountability buddy, somebody you can
Right.
having somebody you can have those conversations with, finding somebody that's in your same situation so that you can have that supportive conversation about things you're going through. Mary, you have a wonderful collection of friends and supporters.
Yeah, I'm so lucky in my life to have all these friends, for sure. And we call them in the education world, we call them accountability partners, So I think that's an awesome idea. I think some people find good luck with writing things down, every single day to write it down, or writing, bullet journaling or something like that. Like, my goals today are to do this, to finish the New York Times crossword puzzle, to take a 10-minute walk, and to, something like that.
Yeah. That's also a good idea.
But
Yeah.
my point behind this whole thing is, I think this is wonderful, the conversation we're having, Kelly. Thank you for your contribution to this. But my point is, let's make sure we're framing all of this stuff in the idea of, well, what's this third act? What do I want it to look like? How am I going to harvest all the things that I've learned? And, start to tune into, well, what things am I really interested in right now? And what kind of stuff do I want to do to make a contribution? And it doesn't have to be an earth-shattering contribution, but something that you feel like you're giving back to the world. I think we all want that and need that.
I was going to say that, Tim, I think we've been talking about, like, doing these big, gigantic things. I think something small is really, really really great and just
Absolutely.
as good.
Yes.
You know, I'm on the board of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and here locally and in Palm Beach, Florida. And mentorship is something I think that is something everyone can do. And I think nothing helps your own self by mentoring somebody else, or mentoring a child. And so I just put that out, not for advertising or any reason, but I think that's something small, but it equals big returns.
And it does, I don't want everybody to think this has to be some giant earth-shattering discovery or contribution,
Yeah.
but I think volunteering once a week, volunteering once a month, contributing money to something that is important to you that you want to see do more of. There's tons of ways to put something out there into the world that's positive and helpful. And again, as I said, I think living a positive, successful life is a huge contribution to the world. I don't think we all have to be these earth-shattering personalities that change the world, but the way you're interacting with the people that you meet at the grocery store and the way that you're moving through life and the conversations you're having and the way you're getting
Yes.
along with your neighbors, like all of these things are a contribution to the wellness of the entire world. Is that
Or just
too
I also
highfalutin
think
sounding?
like adding something on to your life, like adding one small thing on, like, or taking off one thing, like one bad habit, I'll just say, like, or adding something on, like adding a 10-minute walk. I mean, or parking farther away so that you have to walk. I just think like those are really small contributions, but being nice to all the people in the grocery store. I love that one, Tim, because that is like been a thing of mine to just try to be nice to people. And it really makes a big impact on me.
Yeah, the world needs kindness and empathy now more than perhaps ever in the history of certainly our United States does. And I feel like any empathy that I can give and any kindness that I can give is a real contribution to this moment. People are struggling and fearful, and I don't want to be that person. So Kelly, you're here tonight. You've already contributed to the conversation. Is this discussion about the midlife time, is this a new way of framing this to you in your head?
Yes. Yeah. I think, I actually, the blog that I never started was going to be called On the Upside of Down because you're going down the hill. And I was going to
I
look at
love
the
that.
upside of that. But I mean, the reality is I thought of, I, I have been thinking of myself as on the downside. I'm on the far side of the hill and going down.
Well, and I mean, in certain contexts that might be true. And I'm not saying that we never think of ourselves as heading toward where we are, the end of our lives. But I feel like the idea that our culture, and the bottom line of this whole thing tonight is the idea that our culture gives us that it's all a big downhill slide and that your time is up and you're just sort of hanging in there until, that's not, doesn't have to be the case. We can have a successful third act. And I know many people that are my colleagues that are my age that are out there doing great stuff. And sometimes, Mary, they're like they've been an educator and now they're just out there doing it just because they want to do it. You know what I mean? Like they were getting paid
Right.
for it before, but now they're just like I know a lot of band director friends that just they're going to people's rehearsals and helping the band get better because they have this experience and they like doing it. And what a
Larry
contribution to
Wells.
all those students.
Right. I mean, it's so impactful. Like I mentioned his name, Larry Wells. I think he does that a lot. He
Yeah.
does that so well.
Yeah, Larry is a wonderful band director that we both work with that we have the highest admiration for. So listen, everybody, let's review. Okay. Midlife can be from 35 to 75. It's this big chunk of time. It's different for each of us, but it's a third act. It's a time of harvest, not a sad slide time of winter. And I want you to do some thinking, have some conversations, hopefully joins our conversations about what does that mean and how am I going to think about it? And the whole point of this, Mary, for wanting to do this whole conversation here was I wanted to talk about things that I were important to me and that I was interested in. And I felt like reframing how I was thinking about this third act of my own life was very important to me to think about it in a positive way and as gathering all the knowledge and experience I had and then being able to live more joyfully and more easily and with less stress and moving through the world in all the different ways that I can in a better way. This is something I'm going to work toward. And I wanted to have conversations about it to remind myself and help myself do that.
And consider it a harvest. That really helps me. Like somehow that really cements it in my mind, the concept of it.
Yeah, and listen, everybody, I'm a big believer in visualization. So I would say put those words on a sticky note and put it up on your mirror in your bathroom or somewhere that you'll see it. Just like I'm a believer of putting a picture of something that you want on your refrigerator or on your bathroom mirror. We can talk more about that later, but make some notes. Jot down, as Mary suggested, start a journal or just jot down some notes. Well, what do I want to accomplish in the next 5 years? How do I want my life to be? How do I want to take the experiences and knowledge that I've learned through this whole life so far, and then use those to have a better life, move through life more joyfully, maybe make a contribution, put some goodness out there and kindness and empathy out there into the world. Mary, this has been really, really fun. Thank you, Kelly, for contributing to the conversation. Anything you want to say as we're closing?
No, thank you for the opportunity.
No, I've loved having
Thank
you here.
you.
Mary, what would you like to say as we're closing?
Tim, the next time we talk about this is going to be not next week, but the week after. So what's the date?
That's right. It's a week from today, the 28th.
And
Tuesday,
what's the topic then?
Tuesday the 28th. And this is talking about the physical life, right? And I love this idea of thinking about my body differently and thinking about how I'm using my body now to move through the world with ease and grace and not being so terrorized by what the world says my body has to look like or what I have to look like or how I have to think about it. It's the rethinking the physical. That's what we're going to talk about next. I think that will be a very valuable conversation.
Very. I love it. I love this conversation, Tim. Thanks for helping me always as well.
Oh, no, it was wonderful. Thanks, everybody. If you watch this, I hope you found it helpful. Remember, I have a new YouTube channel called Call Me Beast. If you go to Call Me Beast FL, because I'm in Florida, that's where you'll find that. Or go to my website at timhinton.com and you'll see links to all this stuff. So Mary and Kelly, thanks for being a part of the conversation tonight.
Thank you.